Your person had a dream last night that woke them up. In tears, wait, pause for a second. Something quiet, something almost invisible has just shifted, and last night, while you were getting through your own evening, doing whatever you were doing, your person had a dream that ended differently than they expected. They woke up before their alarm. The room was dark. Their face was wet before they had even finished registering that they were awake. They sat up slowly, on the edge of the bed, with their hands in their lap, and for a long stretch of minutes they didn't move. They didn't reach for their phone. They didn't turn on a light. They just sat there in the dark, breathing through whatever the dream had just shown them, trying to figure out why a dream of all things had finally gotten through the wall they had been keeping up for months. If this message speaks to your heart, comment, "I receive this love," like the video, and subscribe for more. Now, before I take you into the dream, you need to understand the context, because dreams don't come from nowhere. A few nights before this one, your person had been somewhere ordinary, in a room with people they sort of knew, doing the same low-level performance of being okay that they have been doing for a while now. They had been holding a drink they didn't really want. They had been laughing at the right times. They had been doing all the small, invisible things adults do to keep other people from asking how they're really doing. And in the middle of that perfectly forgettable evening, someone said your name, not as a topic, just in passing. The way names slip into conversations, your person's face stayed exactly the same. They have practiced, they have gotten very good at it. But underneath the surface, they registered every syllable of it, the way you register a familiar song 2 beats before you consciously recognize the melody. Stay with this, because the next part is what set the dream in motion. The third person, the one who had said your name, kept going. They added something honest about you. Just a sentence. Something they had observed, or experienced, or noticed about who you actually are when you're not performing. It wasn't praise exactly. It was more grounded than praise. It was an observation, the kind only an outsider can make, because outsiders don't have a story to defend. And the observation matched the version of you that your person had been quietly editing down in their memory. For a few seconds in that room, your person could not look up. They kept their eyes on whatever they were holding, took a slower drink, did the small adjustments people do when they don't want anyone to see what's happening inside of them. The conversation moved on. The night moved on. They went home, eventually, like they always do. They went through the motions of getting ready for bed. They did everything in the right order. And when they laid down, they fell asleep faster than usual, which surprised them, because they had assumed they were going to lie awake. They were tired, the kind of tired you carry around for so long, that your body sometimes just decides for you. And then the dream came. This is where things quietly began to shift. The dream wasn't dramatic. That's the part that catches people off guard about dreams like this. They expect a dream that wakes them up in tears to be cinematic, full of confrontation, full of declarations. This wasn't that. This was almost embarrassingly small. They were somewhere ordinary with you, doing something they used to do with you in real life. Maybe sitting somewhere they used to sit. Maybe in the middle of a normal conversation that had nothing important in it. Maybe just standing next to you, in a place neither of you had any reason to remember. And the only unusual thing about the dream, the only thing that made it different from any of the 10,000 ordinary moments their mind had on file, was that you were looking at them. Just looking. The way you used to. And in the dream they could feel themselves being seen. Not analyzed, not evaluated. Seen. The kind of look you give someone when you're not preparing to say anything. You're just letting them be a person, and you're letting yourself notice that you like the person they are. They had not been looked at like that by anyone in a long time. They had not even realized how long it had been, until the dream put them back inside of it. This is where understanding slowly begins. The dream didn't end with anything happening. It ended with the simple act of being looked at, and them looking back, and a feeling settling over the whole moment that the dream version of them did not want to leave. And then, the way dreams do, the scene started to dissolve. The colors started to fade. They could feel themselves being pulled out of it, back toward the surface of consciousness, back toward the bed, back toward the room where they actually were. And in the seconds before they woke up, they tried to hold on. That's the part that broke them. They were trying to stay in the dream. They were trying to stay inside of being seen by you. And they couldn't. When their eyes opened, the tears were already there. Not sobbing. Just the quiet, steady kind that doesn't ask permission, that just shows up because something inside of you didn't know any other way to come out. They wiped their face with the back of their hand, like that would settle anything. Their breathing was uneven, their chest was tight, and underneath all of it, there was a thought, fully formed, sitting in the center of their head, that they had not been ready to think. I miss being seen by them, not I miss them, not I miss us. Specifically, I miss being seen by them, because what the dream had given them, in the most embarrassing, ordinary way, was a few seconds of an experience they had been quietly missing for longer than they could account for. The experience of being looked at by someone who actually saw who they were. And when the dream took it away, the absence of it in their waking life became impossible to ignore. This part they didn't see coming. What happens next isn't loud, but it's the part that mattered most. They sat on the edge of the bed in the dark for a long time. They didn't reach for their phone. They didn't try to fall back asleep. They just let the dream finish leaving their body. Because that's what was happening. The dream was leaving, but the truth it had just shown them wasn't. The truth was settling in, making itself at home in a part of them that had been kept very tightly locked for months now. The truth was this. They had been navigating their life without being seen the way you used to see them. They had been making decisions, building a routine, choosing who to spend time with, choosing what to do on their evenings, choosing how to present themselves, all without that particular kind of seeing in the picture. And it had been working, more or less, on the surface. But underneath the surface, something had been getting hungry. Something inside of them had been quietly starving for the specific quality of attention you used to give them. The third-person sentence a few nights ago had identified it. The dream last night had embodied it. Together, they had revealed something about your person to themselves that they could no longer pretend not to know. If this resonates, let it settle in you. You don't need to do anything with it. Now I want you to understand why a dream did what months of conscious thinking could not. Because this is important. Conscious thinking is editable. You can argue with your own thoughts. You can interrupt them. You can replace them with thoughts that make you feel better. The waking mind is a manager, and it will manage the truth all the way out of the room if it has to. But dreams don't have a manager. Dreams come from the part of you that is not editable. The part that has been keeping its own ledger this whole time, recording everything you have been refusing to look at while you've been busy being functional. And when the ledger gets full enough, the dream comes. And the dream doesn't ask permission. The dream just hands you the ledger and says, "Here, this is what you've been carrying." Last night, your person was handed the ledger. They opened it, they saw what was inside, and they cried, not because the contents were dramatic, but because the contents were so specific, so unflattering to the version of themselves they had been performing, that the gap between who they had been pretending to be and who they actually are became unbearable for a few minutes. The crying was that gap closing, which is to say it was healthy, it was overdue. It was the body's way of finally letting them know what their words had not been able to. This is the part they're still trying to understand. After they sat for a while, they did eventually lie back down. They did not sleep again right away. They stared at the ceiling. The dream replayed in fragments, the way dreams do when you try to hold them. They tried to recall the way your face looked. They tried to recall the way the air had felt in that imagined room. They tried to recall the look. The look was the part that mattered, because the look had been the doorway. They couldn't quite get all of it back, of course, because dreams don't archive cleanly, but they could feel the imprint of it in their chest, the way the imprint of a heavy object stays on a couch cushion long after the object has been moved. Then a sentence appeared in their mind, unbidden. The kind of sentence that arrives whole, like it had been waiting off stage for the right cue. Why does this still feel unfinished? They didn't try to answer it. They didn't have an answer. They just held the sentence and the imprint of the dream and the silence of the room all at once, until eventually their body grew tired enough to let them slip back into sleep. The second sleep was lighter. They woke up before the alarm again. They were tired in a different way than they had been the day before. The way you're tired when you've cried in your sleep and your body remembers it even after your mind has tried to file it away. Stay with this, because the next layer is the one that mattered most. Today, going through their day, they kept catching themselves drifting back to the dream. Not the events of it, the feeling of it, the being seen. They would be in a meeting, or in a line, or in the middle of a conversation. And for a half-second, the imprint would brush past their attention, and they would feel a small ache in their chest before snapping back to whatever they were supposed to be doing. The ache was not unpleasant, exactly. The ache was informative. The ache was telling them, again in the quiet language the body uses when the mind has been refusing to listen, that something they had been categorizing as past was still very much present. They had been thinking they had moved on. The dream and the ache were teaching them they had only relocated the feeling, not resolved it. Maybe I let go too quickly. That sentence has been showing up more often for them lately. Not always with the same words, but always with the same shape. The sentence is taking up more square footage in their head than it used to. It used to flicker. Now it lingers. And lingering is a different category of thought than flickering. Lingering thoughts eventually become decisions, even if the person carrying them doesn't realize that's what's happening. If you've felt this shift too, you already understand. Now, I want to be careful here, because I don't want you to walk away with the wrong takeaway. None of what's happening on their end requires anything from you. You don't have to interpret a dream you weren't in. You don't have to react to tears you didn't witness. You don't have to manage someone else's process of being slowly revealed to themselves. The most powerful thing you can do is to keep being who you are. The kind of person whose look someone misses long after the looking has stopped. The kind of person whose presence in someone's memory is so specific, so unrepeatable, that the absence of it shows up in dreams as small, ordinary scenes that nonetheless wake the dreamer in tears. You did not engineer that. You can't. Nobody can. That kind of presence in another person's inner life is not built. It's earned by being yourself with enough honesty that the relationship leaves a permanent residue. You have left a residue. The residue is starting to make itself known. That's the whole story. There's a verse in Scripture that says, "He gives sleep to those he loves." The only verse I'll mention here, because it fits something I want you to feel. There's a kind of sleep that does work for you. There's a kind of sleep that brings you the truth your waking life has been holding off. Last night, your person was given that kind of sleep. Not as a punishment, not as a haunting, as a gift, even though it didn't feel like one in the moment. The dream brought them a piece of themselves they had been trying to live without, and the tears were the tax on receiving it. They paid the tax. The piece of themselves is now back inside of them. What they do with it is their work, not yours. But I want you to understand what is likely to happen on their end over the next few days, so you can rest your shoulders down and stop carrying their process for them. They are going to keep working. They are going to show up. They are going to do all the visible things. But underneath, they are going to be doing the slow, often invisible labor of integrating something they had been refusing to integrate. The dream is going to keep flickering at the edges of their awareness. The ache will return at unpredictable hours. They might find themselves being kinder, randomly, to people in their life who don't realize why. They might find themselves quieter than usual in social settings because something inside of them has gotten busy. They might find themselves lingering after their evening on the same memories they used to push past quickly. This is integration. It looks like very little from the outside. Inside, it is enormous. The pull to reach out is going to come. They might draft something. They might not send it. They might write your name into a search bar and close the screen before doing anything with it. They might find themselves rehearsing what they would say, even though the rehearsal feels useless. None of these are signs you should be tracking. None of these are signs you should be hoping for. They are simply the small evidences of a person whose internal state has changed, even though their external life looks the same. You are not required to monitor the evidence. You are allowed to live your life completely freely, with no obligation to receive what they may eventually try to send. You did your part. Your part was being the kind of person whose memory shows up in someone else's dreams as a look, a simple look, a look that broke the dam that nothing else had been able to. That look you used to give them is still alive in their nervous system. You don't have to give it again for it to keep doing its work. The look is doing fine on its own. What you might want to consider tonight is this. Whatever you have been carrying about how things ended between you and them, you can lay some of it down. Not because they have apologized. Not because anything has been resolved on the surface. But because the depth that you suspected was real. The depth that you sometimes wondered if you had imagined. The depth that you had perhaps been gaslighting yourself about was real. The dream confirmed it. The tears confirmed it. The ache that has shown up in their day after day confirmed it. You did not make any of that up. You do not have to wait for them to confirm it directly. The confirmation has already been broadcast. You are receiving it now. The strange and quiet beauty of nights like the one your person just had is that they don't change anything immediately. They just plant. The dream planted something last night that is going to root through the soil of their inner life over the coming weeks. They might not water it. They might try not to. But it has already begun to find what it needs in the soil. It has already begun to take. Some things, once they have taken root, do not stop growing. They simply move at the speed they need to move, on the timeline that the soil allows. And one day they are visible above the surface, in a way that surprises everyone who hadn't been paying attention. You can rest tonight, knowing that in someone else's body, something is now growing that you didn't have to plant a second time. The first time was enough. The seed was enough. The seed has waited, and the conditions are finally right, and the growing has started, and you don't have to be there for any of it to keep happening. And what they're beginning to realize now is something they can't walk away from anymore. Not this time.